How's it going, guys and girls? Hope you guys are having a great week. So I'm back today with another What Do We Know So Far video, guys. This one is actually going to focus on Vampyr, which is actually set to come out on the 5th of June next month. There hasn't been too much in terms of sort of marketing for this game, and it's one I'm super interested in. I think it looks really interesting, so I wanted to obviously share it with you guys and obviously share everything that we know about it so far, because I think this game looks super interesting, and I'm actually considering picking it up and playing it. So to give you a bit of information, it is an action RPG game. It's actually developed by Don't Nod Entertainment, and they're a French video game developer that are famous for bringing us two particular titles, which is of course Remember Me, and of course the more well-known and popular Life is Strange, which did extremely well. It is going to be available on the PS4, Xbox One and PC, and of course, as I said, it will be coming out on the 5th of June next month. So what is this game about? Well, the basic plot, you play as the main character, a guy by the name of Jonathan Reed, who is a doctor who very early on, maybe right at the beginning of the game, is turned into a vampire. And pretty much for the rest of the game, you are kind of have to come to terms with, or are torn between, your sort of oath as a doctor and also your newfound bloodthirsty nature as a vampire. The setting for this game is one of the most interesting parts of it. It's actually set in London during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, and as a doctor you're basically on a quest to try to find a cure for the disease. The setting looks amazing. It looks so cool, so dark and atmospheric. Of course, you're a vampire, so the game is set entirely at night time. And it is a fictionalized semi-open world composed of 4 main districts that you will be able to explore during the game. Those include Whitechapel, which is the immigrant district, the East End Docks, which is of course the poorest area of London at that time, full of criminals and gangs. There's the hospital, of course, which you work in, and also the West End, which is the wealthier quarter of London. So you'll be able to sort of see different people, different social statuses, different classes, that kind of thing. Now, all of these 4 areas can actually be fully destroyed depending upon the main character's actions. And each of the 4 areas will actually have a score based on the health of its citizens. So obviously it's up to you as to whether or not you're wanting to save these areas or these citizens as a doctor, or if you're going to give in to your bloodthirsty nature and obviously seek to sort of feed off of the innocent citizens in those areas. And obviously that will lead to destruction and have consequences and so on. So the game looks interesting, and it's not like anything I've really seen recently. You know, vampire games, very rarely do we get to play from the perspective of the vampire. Usually we you know, when you look at zombie games and vampire games, we always play from the viewpoint of the vampire hunter. So it's really interesting to play as the vampire, and it sounds like a very human story of trying to, you know, decide and come to terms with our more darker nature. The player is under no obligation to actually kill to finish the game. So whether or not you choose to hunt and to kill and feed off of the NPCs in the world is entirely at your own discretion. Of course, if you choose not to kill anyone in the world, there are consequences to that. You actually gain XP through feeding on innocent people, through hunting prey, and obviously killing. That is how you get experience and how you level up in terms of your vampire abilities and what you have available to you in combat and you know, during most of the game. So if you choose to not kill, then you're not going to level up, which does mean that the game of course will be more challenging in that way. In terms of deciding who you're going to kill, the most interesting thing with this game is all of the NPCs in the world are actually fleshed out characters. They have full sort of backstories, they have habits, they have relationships with each other. It's not just these random faceless NPCs that you can feed on. Instead, you will actually interact with them, and through dialogue options, you can use these to find out extra information, as well as deciding which NPCs you are going to prey on, which ones you are going to feed on, in order to replenish your strength and of course to level up. So it sounds really interesting. There are actually 60 inhabitants in the world for you to interact with, and I think it's that part of the game that I'm really looking forward to, because if you do feed on one of the NPCs, it will have ricocheting consequences in that world. So if they are someone in a position of authority or very sort of crucially important to a particular area, it will have ripple effects into the stability of that area and how people react to them. Of course, if you kill a relative of a particular character or a friend, that they will of course directly react to that as well in terms of grief and that kind of thing. So that looks really, really interesting, and I love the idea of being able to sort of see the consequences of your own actions, which is really awesome. Of course, this is an RPG. So there is a skill tree that is sort of fueled by experience points, which I gained from both blood and also investigations as well. But majority of your experience points do come from feeding. The branches of the skill tree will actually branch off into 3 areas, which is shadow, instinct, and social abilities. Shadow effectively is to do with your movement around the map and also your level of stealth. So as you sort of grow in power, Jonathan will actually be able to control these shadows and use these to hide and to strike and follow prey and sort of use it to his advantage in combat as well. You also have what's called the spring ability, which will allow you to jump between 2 certain points, at a distance or up to a higher point as well, which we have seen used in a couple of gameplay trailers like the one in the background now. You also have instinct. Instinct is all about your vampire senses. It's like a kind of vision that you can have, and it allows you to detect blood. It also allows you to analyze the health of the particular prey that you're looking at, because obviously if they're infected with Spanish flu, then you're not really going to want to feed on them. So you are actually able to sort of detect not only blood but also the health of those characters as well. Instinct is also used heavily in combat as well. There are a number of vampire moves that you can use during combat, from boiling your enemy's blood to using these very sharp blood spears to impale characters on as well. You do of course there are 3 bars. Now one of them of course is your health bar. Another bar is actually your blood bar, and this will actually reduce, it will go down as you use particular vampire abilities, and the only way to actually replenish it is to feed on enemies and to feed on NPCs to replace that blood. And finally of course we have social abilities. This is the more RPG side of things, and you do have some abilities tied to that. One particular one which is called Mesmerize, which allows you effectively to coerce weaker characters into sort of doing your bidding, or into moving into a particularly less sort of conspicuous area, so you can obviously feed on them without the threat of anybody seeing or attacking you or getting into open combat or something like that. Anyone in the game can actually be targeted as well, which is really interesting, and of course as I've said, there will be heavy consequences for your actions, and that's something that I'm very interested to see how that actually works. As well, Reed can actually turn people into vampires. and will only be able to enter people's houses with an open invitation. And you know, for anyone that's a fan of vampires and vampire lore and like Buffy and Angel and that kind of thing, like I am, it's really cool to see that element in there, that you know, you do need to be invited to go into these people's homes. So that's interesting. Whether or not you can get into public areas, I guess we'll have to see, but I would assume you'll be allowed access to like the hospital, which is a public area. But obviously someone's home you need to be invited into, and that's probably where the ability mesmerize will become quite useful. As well, upon killing a victim, Reed will actually, the victim will actually impart to Reed their last thought. So it'll give you a little bit of insight into that character, what they're thinking, what their last dying thoughts are, and who they're thinking of. And it should make for some quite emotional sort of elements to the game, and of course quite a lot of puzzle solving elements as well, because ultimately you are trying to find a cure for the Spanish flu, and obviously well, if you choose to go down that route, of course. In terms of enemies and types of vampires to sort of face, there are quite a few different types of vampires in the game. You have your aristocrats, which in the game are called econs, and that's what Reed is. They're your sort of more typical, well-known vampires. You then have Scowls. These are sewer-dwelling vampires. Volkod, which is a stronger breed of vampire, more sort of resembling werewolves. So obviously you'll have to fight them most likely. And then Nemrod. These are vampires who actually hunt their own kind. So it'll be interesting to see them. As well, we have also been introduced to the Guard of Pruwen, which actually are a secret society of vampire slayers. And we did actually see in a trailer footage, I think their captain, who really hates Jonathan Reed and obviously suspects that he is a vampire and is obviously out to get him. So that is pretty much everything that we know so far about Vampyr. I think this game looks really interesting and I'm super interested in picking it up and playing it. It all depends obviously on when I finish Detroit Become Human, because I will be buying that on the 25th of May and I am looking forward to it. But after that, I think I am pretty much planning to pick up Vampyr to play the game and obviously to get a review out to you guys as well. But anyway, that's everything that we know so far about Vampyr. Let me know what you guys think of this game in the comment section below. Is it something that you're interested in? Are you looking at picking it up? Do you like vampire games? What's the best vampire game that you've ever played? Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.